I hate parties, especially when my wife's the drunkest one there and my brother's holding court like he's the mayor of this godforsaken Maine town. The Millfield High School gymnasium reeked of stale beer and desperate nostalgia. 20 years since graduation, and here we all were, pretending we'd amounted to something more than our teenage dreams suggested. Laura was 3 drinks past tipsy, giggling at everything Jake said like he was performing stand-up comedy instead of bragging about his fishing shop's latest tax write-offs. "Come on, everyone in the circle!" Trina Kellerman shrieked, her voice cutting through the classic rock playlist like nails on a chalkboard. "Truth or shot time!" My stomach clenched. Nothing good ever came from party games, especially when Laura got that glassy-eyed look that meant she'd lost her filter somewhere around drink number 4. "Jack, you're up first," Trina announced, pointing at me with a red plastic cup. I shrugged. "Truth. Boring," someone called out. The circle of 40-something former classmates laughed. "What's the worst thing you've ever done to someone you love?" Trina asked, her eyes gleaming with the kind of malicious curiosity that made her the town's unofficial gossip coordinator. I thought about it for a moment, watching Laura lean against Jake's shoulder. I married someone I thought I knew. The circle went quiet for a beat before nervous laughter filled the space. Laura's face flushed red, but not from embarrassment, from anger. "My turn," she announced, grabbing the bottle and spinning it. It landed on herself. "Truth." Jake grinned. "What's your darkest fantasy, sis-in-law?" The way he said it made my skin crawl. Too familiar, too comfortable. Laura looked directly at me, her eyes unfocused but determined. She leaned forward, and in a voice loud enough for half the circle to hear, whispered, "I want you to watch while I do it with your brother." The gymnasium fell silent except for the distant hum of the sound system. Someone coughed. Mrs. Henderson from the bank covered her mouth with her hand, then Laura burst into laughter. "Just kidding. God, you should see your faces." Everyone joined in the laughter, relieved to have an excuse to break the tension. Everyone except me. My stomach had turned to antifreeze, and something cold was spreading through my chest. Jake slapped his knee. "Laura, you're terrible. Poor Jack looks like he's seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Yeah, hilarious." But it wasn't. The way Laura had looked at Jake when she said it. The way Jake hadn't seemed surprised. The way they'd both been sitting just a little too close all evening. I stood up. "I need some air." "Oh, come on, Jack," Laura called after me. "Don't be such a baby. It was just a joke." I walked out of that gymnasium and didn't look back. Drove home in silence, packed a bag, and moved into the hunting cabin my dad had left me up in the pines. Laura called twice that night. I didn't answer. That was a week ago. I thought I'd hit rock bottom. Turns out there's a basement. Emily called on a Tuesday morning while I was cleaning my rifle. 20 years old, home from college for spring break, and she had that shaky voice that meant trouble. "Dad, can we meet somewhere? I need to tell you something. I'm tired of hiding." We met at Murphy's Diner on Route 9, the kind of place where the coffee's been brewing since the Carter administration and the pie's worth the drive from 3 towns over. Emily was already in a corner booth when I arrived, picking at her cuticles the way she'd done since she was 5. "You look like hell, kiddo," I said, sliding into the booth across from her. She tried to smile. "Thanks. You're not exactly glowing yourself." Fair point. I hadn't been sleeping much since the party. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Laura's voice. "I want you to watch while I do it with your brother." "So, what's this about?" I asked. Emily stared at her untouched coffee for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "You're not my father." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I felt my vision tunnel, heard my heartbeat in my ears. "What?" "Mom told me when I turned 18, made me promise not to tell you. She said it would destroy you." Emily's voice cracked. I think Uncle Jake is..." I sat there, watching my daughter, not my daughter, fall apart across from me, and felt something fundamental shift inside my chest, like a bone breaking but deeper. "How long have you known?" I managed. 2 years. God, Dad, Jack. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so many times, but Mom said..." "Your mother says a lot of things." My voice sounded strange, distant. "Tell me everything." Emily wiped her nose with a napkin. "There were always these trips. Girls' weekends, Mom called them, but Jake would be there. They'd take me camping or to his cabin up north. Mom would get this look when she talked about him, like she was thinking about something else." I thought about all those weekends Laura had taken Emily away, All the times Jake had volunteered to help with childcare, all the family barbecues where they'd disappear together to get more ice or check on the grill. There's more, Emily continued. Last Christmas I overheard them talking. Jake was saying something about how I had his eyes, his stubborn streak. Mom was laughing, saying you never suspected anything. The antifreeze feeling was back, spreading through my limbs. Why are you telling me now? Because of what happened at the party. Trina's been telling everyone about Mom's joke. But I saw her face when she said it. It wasn't a joke, was it? I looked at my daughter, Jake's daughter, and saw his green eyes staring back at me. How had I never noticed? No, I said, I don't think it was. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the diner's ancient coffee machine gurgle and wheeze. Finally, Emily reached across the table and took my hand. You're still my dad, she said. Biology doesn't change that. I squeezed her fingers. Maybe that's why you're better at fishing than math. She laughed despite her tears. That's terrible. Yeah, well, I'm having a terrible week. After Emily left, I sat in my truck in the diner parking lot and called Ray Morrison, my hunting buddy since high school. Ray ran a small lab testing service for local vets and farmers. I need a favor, I told him. The kind that stays between us. What kind of favor? DNA testing, paternity stuff. Ray was quiet for a moment. Jack, what's going on? The kind of thing that requires DNA testing. Crap, okay. Bring me samples. I'll run it through the agricultural lab, keep it off the books. Getting Jake's DNA was easier than I'd expected. He left beer bottles everywhere, and his fishing shop was littered with cigarette butts. I collected samples like I was gathering evidence for a homicide case, which, in a way, I was. The homicide of everything I'd thought I knew about my life. The results came back 3 days later. Ray's face told me everything before he opened his mouth. I'm sorry, Jack. I stared at the paper, seeing the numbers that confirmed what my heart already knew. Emily wasn't mine. 20 years of bedtime stories, soccer games, homework help, and proud father moments, all built on a lie. You want to talk about it? Ray asked. Not yet, but I might need another favor soon. What kind? I folded the DNA results and put them in my wallet. The kind that involves a hunting trip. Jake was easy to convince. Too easy. Brother's hunting trip? He said when I called. Hell yes. Been too long since we got into the woods together. The eagerness in his voice made my skin crawl. He probably thought this was his chance to smooth things over, maybe even gloat a little about his conquest. Jake always was arrogant enough to believe he could charm his way out of anything. We met at dawn on Saturday, loading gear into my pickup. Jake brought enough supplies for a week, including a bottle of expensive whiskey I was pretty sure he'd stolen from my liquor cabinet during one of his visits. Where are we heading? He asked as we drove north into the pine wilderness. The old cabin, Dad's spot up near Bear Creek. Jake grinned. Perfect. Haven't been up there since we were kids. That was a lie. I'd seen his truck parked at the trailhead plenty of times over the years, probably bringing Laura and Emily up there for their special family bonding trips. The drive took 2 hours, winding deeper into the Maine woods where cell service died, and civilization became a distant memory. Jake kept up a steady stream of chatter about business, the weather, local gossip. Normal brotherly conversation, if you didn't know one brother had been screwing the other's wife for over 20 years. You seem better, he said as we hiked the final mile to the cabin. More relaxed. The separation's good for you. Separation? Come on, Jack. Whole town knows you moved out after the party. Laura's been staying with Trina, crying into her wine about how you overreacted to her little joke. I adjusted my rifle strap and kept walking. Funny how a joke can reveal so much truth. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, just thinking out loud. The cabin sat in a clearing surrounded by towering pines, exactly as Dad had left it when he died 5 years ago. Rustic, isolated, and about 15 miles from the nearest road. Perfect for what I had in mind. We spent the morning setting up, checking equipment, and scouting the area. Jake was in his element, playing the experienced outdoorsman, telling stories about past hunting trips and close calls with wildlife. Remember that bear we saw up here when we were teenagers? He asked as we walked along Bear Creek. Big fool, must have been 6 feet tall. I remember. I also remembered this was the spot where local search and rescue teams had found 2 lost hikers last winter, both dead from exposure after getting turned around in a snowstorm. They say there's still a big male around here somewhere, Jake continued. Ray Morrison saw tracks last month, size of dinner plates. We were standing near the old bear burrow now. a depression in the hillside where generations of black bears had denned up for winter. The local legends made it sound like a death trap, but really it was just another part of the forest. Dangerous only if you were stupid, unprepared, or abandoned by someone who knew these woods better than his own backyard. "Jake," I said, stopping beside a fallen log, "we need to talk." He turned, and for the first time that day his smile faltered. "About what?" "About Emily." The color drained from his face. "What about her? About how she's not my daughter?" Jake went very still. In the distance, a crow cawed, and wind rustled through the pine needles above us. He was calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much he could deny. "Jack, I don't know what you're talking about." "DNA test says otherwise." His shoulders sagged. "Crap. 20 years, Jake. 20 fucking years. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? You seduce my wife, father my child, and I never find out?" Jake ran a hand through his hair. "Laura was unhappy. You were working all the time, never paid attention to her. She needed someone who understood her. So you volunteered. It just happened, okay? One night after you'd had that big fight about money, she came to the shop crying, needed someone to talk to. One thing led to another. And you've been talking for 21 years. We tried to stop, multiple times, but we love each other, Jack." The words hit me like a physical blow. Love. Not just sex, not just an affair. Love. And Emily. Laura was going to leave you. We were going to be together, raise Emily as our own. But then your dad got sick, and you inherited the cabin and the land, and Laura realized you were worth more as a husband than I was as a boyfriend. So she stayed married to me and kept you as her side piece. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Jake? He looked around the clearing, probably realizing for the first time how isolated we were, how far from help. "It was complicated." I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "You know what's not complicated? The fact that you stole my life, my wife, my daughter, my family. You took everything that mattered to me and made it yours. Emily still loves you. You're still her father in every way that matters. Except biology, except truth, except the fact that every time I look at her, I'll see your face." Jake took a step backward. "Jack, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared." I turned and started walking back toward the cabin, leaving Jake standing by the bear burrow. Behind me, I heard him scramble to follow. "Where are you going?" "Home." "What about me?" I didn't answer. I just kept walking, listening to Jake's increasingly panicked voice calling after me as the distance between us grew. "Jack, come back. You can't leave me out here." But I could, and I did. Jake didn't come home that night, or the next. Sheriff Murdoch showed up at my cabin Tuesday morning, hat in hand and questions in his eyes. Tom Murdoch had been 2 years ahead of us in school, played football until a knee injury ended his college dreams. Now he kept the peace in Millfield and tried not to think too hard about what that peace was built on. "Morning, Jack. Mind if I come in?" "Course not. Coffee?" "Thanks." We sat at my kitchen table like old friends, which we were, sort of. Tom had been to plenty of family barbecues over the years, knew Jake and Laura well enough to understand the basic dynamics. "Jake's missing," he said without preamble. "Missing how?" "Laura filed a report yesterday. Says he was supposed to meet her Sunday night. Never showed. His truck's still parked at the Bear Creek trailhead." I sipped my coffee and tried to look concerned. "That's not like Jake. He knows those woods pretty well." "That's what I figured. Laura says you two went hunting together Saturday. She's worried something happened." "We did go hunting. Spent the morning up at Dad's cabin. Did some scouting around Bear Creek. And then Jake wanted to stay longer. Try for that big buck Ray Morrison spotted last month. I had things to do back here, so I left him to it." Tom nodded, making notes in his little pad. "What time was that?" "Maybe 2 o'clock. Jake said he'd hike out before dark, meet Laura for dinner." "But he didn't." "Apparently not." Tom studied my face. "You two have a fight or anything? Laura mentioned there's been some tension since the anniversary party. Jake and I always have tension. Comes with being brothers." "What kind of tension?" I set down my coffee cup and met his eyes. "The kind where one brother screws the other brother's wife for 20 years. Tom's pen stopped moving. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Jake's been having an affair with Laura since before Emily was born. Hell, Emily's his daughter, not mine." "Jesus Christ, Jack. Got the DNA test to prove it if you're interested." Tom rubbed his forehead. That's a hell of a motive. For what? For wanting your brother to disappear? I leaned back in my chair. Tom, if I wanted Jake dead, I wouldn't have done it in the woods where everyone knows I hunt. I'd have done it in town, in front of witnesses, so everyone could see it was self-defense when he came at me for exposing his lies. So you didn't hurt him? I didn't lay a finger on Jake, but I didn't help him either. When he asked me to stay, to help him track that buck, I said no. When he wanted me to wait while he explored that old bear den, I said I had better things to do. Jake's been taking care of himself just fine for 20 years. I figured he could handle one night in the woods. Tom was quiet for a long moment. The bear den? Yeah, that old burrow up near the creek. Jake was all excited about it, said he wanted to get some pictures for his shop's website. You know how he is about that outdoorsman image? Jack, that area's been posted as dangerous since last winter. The bear that eliminated those hikers? Fish and Game thinks it's still denning somewhere in that sector. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I didn't know that. There were signs posted on all the main trails. We came in from the north through Dad's old logging road, didn't see any signs. Tom closed his notebook. I need to get a search team up there. Of course, whatever you need. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the pine trees outside my window. I'd wanted to scare Jake, maybe leave him stranded long enough to think about what he'd done to our family. I hadn't wanted him dead, but I wasn't exactly heartbroken either. The search team found Jake's body Wednesday afternoon, about half a mile from the bear burrow. He'd apparently gotten turned around in the dark, tried to make it back to his truck, and died of exposure when the temperature dropped below freezing. No signs of violence. No evidence of foul play. Just a middle-aged man who'd made some bad decisions and paid the ultimate price. Tom called me with the news. I'm sorry, Jack, I know things were complicated between you two, but he was still your brother. Yeah, I said. He was. The funeral was Friday. I sat in the front pew with Laura and Emily, playing the grieving brother while the whole town whispered about family tragedy and the dangers of the Maine wilderness. Laura cried dramatically into a black handkerchief. Emily sat stone-faced, staring at Jake's casket. After the service, Trina Kellerman cornered me in the church parking lot. This is all very convenient for you, she said, her voice sharp with accusation. What's that supposed to mean? Jake dies right after you find out about the affair. Awfully suspicious timing. Trina, my brother died because he was too arrogant to admit he was lost. If you want to blame someone, blame his ego. The whole town's talking, Jack. People are saying you left him out there on purpose. People can say whatever they want. The sheriff investigated. No charges were filed. That doesn't mean you're innocent. I stepped closer to her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet my eyes. Trina, you've been stirring up gossip in this town since we were in high school. But be very careful about the stories you tell now. Because if you accuse me of homicide, I might start telling some stories of my own. What stories? Like how you've been skimming money from the church bake sale fund for 3 years. Or how you've been selling information about people's private business to that divorce lawyer in Bangor. Small towns have long memories, Trina. Make sure yours doesn't get you in trouble. She paled and stepped back. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? I walked away, leaving her standing alone beside her car. Behind me, I heard her fumble with her keys, hands shaking. The hunt was just beginning. Laura came to the cabin Sunday night, a week after Jake's funeral. She was drunk, which wasn't unusual, but she was also angry, which was dangerous. You eliminated him, she said, swaying in my doorway. Come in, Laura, you shouldn't be driving. Don't pretend to care about me now. But she came inside anyway, collapsing into Dad's old recliner like she owned the place. Maybe she thought she did. Maybe she thought Jake's end meant she could come back, play the grieving widow, and pick up where we'd left off. I didn't eliminate Jake, I said, settling onto the couch across from her. The woods eliminated Jake. You left him there. Tom Murdoch told me. You just walked away. I walked away from a lot of things that day. Laura's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know everything, Laura. The affair, Emily's paternity, all of it. Emily told you. Emily told me some of it. I figured out the rest. Laura laughed, a bitter sound. So what now? You going to divorce me? Take half of nothing? I'm not taking anything from you, Laura, but I'm not giving you anything either. What about Emily? She's still your daughter, Jack. Biology doesn't change 20 years of being her father. No, but it changes everything else. Laura leaned forward, trying to focus through the alcohol. Jake loved me. We were going to be together. But you stayed married to me instead. Because you had the land, the cabin, the inheritance. Jake had a fishing shop and a mortgage. The brutal honesty was almost refreshing. So, you kept us both. The husband for security, the lover for passion. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. It hurt Emily, it hurt me. Hell, it probably hurt Jake, living a lie for 20 years. Jake was happy. Jake was dead because he was so used to sneaking around, playing games, that he couldn't ask for help when he actually needed it. Laura started crying, the messy, self-pitying tears of someone who'd been caught and didn't like the consequences. I loved him, she sobbed. I know you did. That's what makes this so much worse. She looked up at me through her tears. So what happens now? Now you leave. You pack up whatever's yours from the house and you go. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Laura wiped her nose with her sleeve. You can't just throw me out. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to live. Beyond that, we'll let the lawyers figure it out. She stood up unsteadily. This isn't over, Jack. Yes, it is. After she left, I sat in the dark cabin and listened to the wind in the pines. Somewhere out there, Jake's body was rotting in Millfield Cemetery, and his secrets were rotting with him. But the damage was done. 20 years of lies don't disappear just because the liar is dead. Emily came to see me the next morning, her eyes red from crying. Mom's moving in with Trina, she said. She says you threw her out. Your mother made her choice a long time ago. Now she gets to live with it. And what about me? I looked at my daughter, Jake's daughter, and felt my heart break all over again. What about you? Do you still love me? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Emily was standing in the doorway, backlit by morning sun, looking so much like Jake that it physically hurt to look at her. I loved the little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap during bedtime stories, I said finally. I loved the teenager who came to me when she got her heart broken for the first time. I loved 20 years of memories. But I don't know how to love Jake's daughter. I don't know how to separate you from him or him from what he did to our family. Emily's face crumpled. So you're abandoning me too. I'm not abandoning anyone. But I can't pretend this doesn't change things. It doesn't have to change anything. It changes everything, Emily. Every memory, every moment, every piece of our relationship was built on a lie. How do I get past that? She didn't have an answer. Neither did I. 2 months later, Laura tried to take me to court for half of everything. The DNA test results made that complicated since they proved our marriage was based on fraud. Her lawyer argued for emotional distress and wrongful abandonment. My lawyer argued for infidelity and paternity fraud. We settled out of court. Laura got enough money to start over somewhere else. I got to keep the cabin, the land, and what was left of my dignity. Emily went back to college and stopped calling. I heard through Ray Morrison that she was seeing a counselor, trying to work through her feelings about Jake, Laura, and me. I hoped she'd figure it out eventually. I hoped she'd find a way to forgive all of us. But I wasn't holding my breath. 6 months after Jake's end, I was having a beer at Murphy's Tavern when Trina Kellerman walked in with Laura's old boss from the bank. They sat at a corner table, whispering and laughing, looking like they were planning something. I finished my beer and walked over to their table. Evening, Trina. Dave. Dave Paulson had been the bank manager for 15 years, a soft man with a weak handshake and wandering eyes. He'd been married to the same woman for 20 years, but that hadn't stopped him from making passes at every female employee under 40. Jack, Trina said coldly, we were just leaving. No need to rush off on my account. I just wanted to thank you, Dave. Thank me for what? For firing Laura. Save me the trouble of exposing her little embezzlement scheme. Dave's face went white. What embezzlement scheme? The one where she was skimming money from the business accounts to pay for her weekend trips with Jake. You know, the ones she told you were client meetings? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of a bank statement I'd found in Laura's things. Funny how those client meetings always cost exactly what a weekend at the Riverside Inn runs. Even funnier how the clients she was supposedly meeting don't exist. Dave grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. Now, I could take this to the State Banking Commission, I continued. Or I could just let it slide, considering Laura's not your problem anymore. What do you want? Nothing from you, Dave, but I want Trina to understand something. I turned to face her. You've been telling people I homicided my brother. That's slander, Trina, and slander can be expensive. You can't prove I said anything. Can I? Because I've been recording our conversations for months. Amazing what people will say when they think nobody's listening. That was a lie, but Trina didn't know that. Her face went through several shades of pale before settling on gray. What do you want? I want you to tell everyone the truth. That Jake died because he was careless, not because I eliminated him. That Laura left town because she was caught embezzling, not because I threw her out. And that anyone who says different is going to have to answer to my lawyer. And if I don't? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then I start telling people about your little side business. You know, the one where you sell gossip to divorce lawyers and private investigators. Amazing how much people will pay for dirt on their neighbors. Trina's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Small towns have long memories, I said. Make sure yours doesn't get you run out of this one. I left them sitting there, staring at each other across the table. By morning, half the town would know that Dave Paulson was sleeping with Trina Kellerman, and the other half would know that Trina had been selling their secrets to outsiders. Laura called me that night from whatever city she'd landed in. You fool, she said. Trina told me what you did. I didn't do anything to Trina that she didn't do to herself. You destroyed her life. Trina destroyed her own life when she decided to make money off other people's misery. I just made sure everyone knew about it. And Dave? Dave made his choice when he decided to help you steal money from the bank. Laura was quiet for a long moment. You've changed, Jack. You used to be a good man. I used to be a fool. There's a difference. What about Emily? She's your daughter, no matter what that DNA test says. Emily's an adult. She can make her own choices about who she wants in her life. She misses you. She misses the man she thought I was. That man died the night you told everyone your fantasy about fucking my brother. Laura hung up without saying goodbye. I poured myself a whiskey and sat on the cabin's front porch, listening to the wind in the pines. Somewhere out there in the darkness, Jake was still dead, Laura was still gone, and Emily was still trying to figure out how to live with the truth. But I was still here, still breathing, still standing. Some people hunt for sport. I hunt for truth, and I always bag my limit. The town learned to leave me alone after that. They'd nod when they saw me at the hardware store or the diner. But they didn't ask questions about Jake or Laura or what really happened in the woods that day. They didn't want to know, because deep down, they understood what I'd figured out. Sometimes justice isn't about the law. Sometimes it's about making sure people face the consequences of their choices. Jake chose to steal my life. He died alone in the woods. Laura chose to live a lie. She lost everything that mattered. Trina chose to profit from other people's pain. She became the town pariah, and I chose to survive, to endure, to make sure that when the dust settled, I was the one left standing. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even justice, really, but it was enough.